Well, hello and welcome back to the Opcast. I'm Beau Higgins, your host of our Opline podcast, and super excited today to have on Lacey Craig from T-Mobile. Lacey's been a friend for a long time since I was at Amazon and an awesome partner on the veteran hiring and military spouse hiring in particular. I think of you as the go-to for that, but great to have you on the podcast today, and we'll let you introduce yourself. So Lacey, let's talk about a little about yourself. What's your background?
Yeah, thanks, Beau. I'm so excited to be here today with you and everyone watching. So I'm Lacey Craig. I'm a senior program manager on the military and partnership recruiting team here at T-Mobile. I've been with T-Mobile for about 3.5 years now. And as you mentioned, I manage a lot of our military hiring and engagement programs. So I'm responsible here for our fellowship, our corporate fellowship, and our military spouse fellowship program. I also manage all of our external military partnerships. We do a lot of transition programs. We do engagement opportunities, seminars on, how to transition, how to network, all of those things, how to prepare for your next employment opportunity. And then I'm also the co-chair of our Southern California Employee Engagement Chapter, which includes our Veterans and Allies Network, which is really fun.
That is awesome. No, you are obviously, and I have seen you out there in person, a great advocate for our military community as a whole. And I'm just, what got you to that point? What's your background or connection to the military community?
Yeah, I love talking about this because it's a little bit unique. My dad actually served in the military for 38 years. And so I spent 32 years of my life supporting his military service. And I think what's unique is I'm not going to age myself, but during the era that he was serving as, a teenager and young adult, I got to witness and see the impacts on being a military spouse on my mom, and really a lot of the obstacles that she faced and sacrifices that she made in terms of not having sustainment career. We were the only ones out of our family that moved across the country because of the military. So we didn't have family connections. We didn't live on base. So our experience was a little bit far removed. And my dad has been deployed in every major conflict since Vietnam. So I feel like we definitely went through the full throttle experience of the military family. I have a unique perspective, not just as a military child, but also kind of seeing my mom's journey as the military spouse. And I think it's different when you're a little kid and you go through it, but as you become an adult and you see the impact that it has on being able to take your career with you. And she was a spouse before there was remote work and virtual working options, not a lot of daycare opportunities, and there were not programs like your organization, like this podcast, like Hiring a Hero. So many of the organizations that exist now did not exist in those earlier times. And so I really saw her struggles as a military spouse continuing to support my dad's service time. And when I got into a position as a area manager for a big corporation, I managed the territory outside of Camp Pendleton, and most of my customers and employees were military affiliated. And I thought, we have an opportunity to do something here, to bridge the gap, because I was noticing that there was a continued gap in how do you engage with the military community? What questions do you ask if you're a civilian? And I think, 1% of Americans will serve in the military, and less than that will know somebody that served in the military. And I think that there continues to be this divide between understanding really what that lifestyle is like. So I saw some of the employees that maybe weren't getting the support or engagement that they needed if their spouse was deployed or if they needed to relocate. And I felt that social responsibility to do something about it. And that's where kind of my personal experience and upbringing really merged with where I was professionally. And so I became a part of the employee resource group for that company, helped open military family stores, really got involved in policy and change for supporting military employees, because I see a lot of companies that say we're military friendly, but what does that even mean, right? And so I felt like it was a huge responsibility for me to come into a role of influence and be able to activate that change. And I can tell you that over the course of the past almost 10 years that I've been doing this work, what's really cool is that now at T-Mobile, they have enabled me to create policies that support our military employees that I can definitely spend all day talking about. But I think that I felt that responsibility of giving back to the community that I'm a part of. And although I did not serve myself in a direct capacity, 32 years of my dad's service time and my family going through that, I really felt inspired and driven to continue to do more for the community that I will always be a part of and that, I'm surrounded by.
I love that. And your passion always comes through every time you talk about the military and the military community, and the military spouses in particular. I know it's near and dear to your heart. And I lived it. I mean, I was 25 years Marine Corps, and my wife was a teacher. And every time we moved, it was just the certification process, and couldn't get a job, and childcare was hard. And then I saw my own kids. I mean, I have 5 children, and my oldest, I retired when she just finished her freshman year of high school. And one of the reasons I retired was because I didn't want to keep moving her, because I saw the impact. It was great. I think, when you're younger, it's easy and you make friends, but the older you get, it can be hard. It can have a hard impact on military kids, especially girls, and especially in high school. It can be tough, and to be able to give back to the community and give the spouses in particular the opportunity to serve while their spouse serves, whoever, male, female, doesn't matter. But that's it's such a new focus and underappreciated need to be able to give back to those spouses that, continue to move and support their service member that's in, because it's a hard lifestyle. I mean, again, I loved it. I love my time. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but, your family gets caught up in it whether they like it or not, and they have to kind of come along, and I think more needs to be done for our military families and the spouses in particular. So, love your passion for it and all you're doing, continue to do to advocate for that. But I mean, obviously you didn't get into this role overnight, and it's something that kind of started. I mean, is it something you always wanted to do when you started your first job? You kind of knew it, or how did you get the spark to start saying, I need to do more? I mean, I think when you first start, you're kind of just figuring out your job, but most people don't come in a veteran supporting role. I assume you did not, but you just kind of felt like that was something was missing from you, or what was kind of the journey?
It's so funny you ask this, because I can tell you the day that I realized that this is what I wanted to do. And I think that, kind of for perspective, the generation that my dad entered the military and then served in were not always vocal about their service time and their deployments. And so, to be honest, as a kid and young adult, it was just a part of life, but I didn't understand it. And I don't know that I really respected, his service time and really understood how our family was maybe a little bit different than my friends or my other, my colleagues and that kind of thing. And, I think that it wasn't until I actually was working at Starbucks at the time as an area manager, and we went to an employee conference, and I had the opportunity to hear Howard Schultz speak. And that's when we launched our military hiring initiative for the company. And that's the first time I'd been part of a company that had any kind of military focus. So this was back in 2013. So, at that time, that's when that focus kind of started coming to life of, hey, there's a gap between the civilian and military populations, and we should probably do something about it. And military spouse unemployment is 25%. We should probably do something about that. And I remember I was at this employee conference and I heard Howard Schultz speak, and it was the first time in my life that I felt like I have to do something. This is my community. My dad was serving still at the time. And I remember leaving the conference and I called him. I will try not to get emotional about this, but I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to help transitioning veterans. I'm going to help spouses. I'm going to help, bring awareness to military children and, why they maybe have gaps in education or, gaps in employment because of all of these moves and relocation. Dad, I'm going to do something about this. And I had no idea what that meant. But I was like, I'm going to do the thing. And so I spent the rest of that conference just trying to meet as many people as I could to talk to them about, well, what does this mean? We're committing to helping the military community, but what does that even mean? And really diving into leveraging how the company was rolling this out and the support. And I connected with every veteran I could, every military spouse I could, found out about veteran service organizations, and I just started volunteering my time to really understand more. Because again, my experience is different than, a military spouse experience or a transitioning service member or even another military service family member. So I wanted to learn everything. Like, what are some of the struggles? What are you going through? What has this experience been like for you? And so I started volunteering with the USO. I started volunteering with Blue Star Families. I started volunteering with all of these different veteran service organizations to get closer to the community and really understand what some of these opportunities were. Because you can't do something about something you don't understand, or you don't want to make assumptions like, oh, my experience must be the experience and the gap of everybody. So I just stayed curious and started connecting with different people and organizations and then bringing these partnerships to life. So I was very fortunate with both Starbucks and T-Mobile, where the companies are both very supportive of the military community. And when I came to them with crazy ideas, like, we should support Blue Star Families and we should sponsor this and this and this. And they were behind it. And I think that's the difference, is understanding why is it important. So I would always explain the why. Did you know this? Did you know that this is our community? These are your customers that you're serving that we need to serve differently. So that's how it all started for me. And I think, you don't know the answer right away. I had no idea that my role I'm in even existed, quite frankly. But I feel like over time, I've been able to craft this really awesome opportunity and role here at T-Mobile and influence some very meaningful change. But I stay very curious. I'm really big on networking, understanding more about different community organizations, and never assuming that I know the answers to things, because it's not one size fits all with this community.
No, I love, again, just the story of the why behind it for you is awesome. And telling your dad, you're going to do something. I don't know what I'm doing, Dad, but I'm doing something. I know that needs to be more. And it's interesting talking about Starbucks too, because when I joined Amazon back in 2016, I was in Seattle, and Starbucks obviously up there too. And they were really, I think Starbucks was one of the first companies to start really investing in the veterans and the spouses. I know they would give some kind of a pins they had if you were a veteran or spouse in the stores.
Our aprons.
And yeah, apron. It was an apron. That's right, exactly. I'm sure you know firsthand, and just it was really great. And I tried to learn as one of the new guys myself back now almost 10 years ago, who is doing it the best and who is doing it right. And to your point, going out and talking to people about, okay, what is the best practice that people are utilizing now to help our military community, whether it be the veterans or the spouses, whether it be for hiring, engagement, for retention, whatever it is, because it's a complicated thing. It's not like you can't, like, to your point, it's not just waving the flag saying, we like veterans, of course. Nobody's going to say, we don't want to hire veterans, right? But how do you go beyond that and do something that's meaningful and impactful for those veterans and for the military spouses in particular? And I think the spouses, like you said, it's not only unemployment, it's underemployment too. How do we provide good quality jobs for our spouses to get, beyond working, at nothing against Starbucks, but beyond, you have a master's degree, you shouldn't be working as a barista at Starbucks or at the deli, the Subway on base. I mean, how do we do something to make sure they are being fully valued as part of the military community? And again, I think your leadership and what you're doing as an example at T-Mobile is awesome, and just kind of pushing those programs forward and becoming an example for other companies to look at. So it's great. It's great to see.
And what a lot of people don't understand is when you're asking, what can I do to support veterans, or how can I show that I support the veteran community? You can offer their spouse a job. You can hire their spouse, because what a lot of employers don't recognize is that, well, yes, transitioning service members and veterans need jobs too, but military spouses are critical in the sustainment of the economic success for military families. And for veterans and transitioning service members, as they're transitioning out, to not get underemployed, not get underjobbed. Statistically, 33% of veterans transition out of their first post-transition job within the first year, because they just have to find a job. They are usually the income providers for their family at that point, and they just have to find a job. And so military spouses that are employed during that transition also help sustain the transition of the service member into meaningful employment that is long lasting. And it's so funny because we have a really good relationship with 4Block, and we did a cohort training class with them a couple weeks ago. And I had 4 veterans that were hired straight from transition into T-Mobile and have been with us for like 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. And they were talking to the cohort about, this, be prepared, because if you don't do your research and you don't land with the right job, you're probably going to end up switching jobs within your first year. It's going to be rocky. And they said that they are the exception because their spouse either was able to get employed and help them be able to find the right job, or they went through these transition programs and employers that help them with things like the fellowship to really identify sustained employment for the long run. And then they didn't feel like they made the wrong choice when they got out of the service. And it goes such a long way. Hiring the spouse helps the veteran, helps the service member. Like, so many people don't get that. And it's critical, right? For the overall success of the military family.
No, it's so huge. And again, underappreciated. Again, whether on active duty service, to have the spouse have employment is awesome, because again, then the family it makes the service member want to stick around more, because, they're not just solely reliant on the service member, to have that second income to make them, to make life better for the service member. If the spouse is happy, the service member should be happy. If the spouse is not happy, the service member not be happy. So again, that the spouse having a job is a huge part of that. And I really love the point about that bridge time when it's the service member is transitioning. If the spouse has employment, it gives them a little bit of cushion, a little bit of time to focus on the right job, not just any job. Because I saw that, I talk about this a lot when I talk to transitioning veterans about the importance of culture at companies, because every company has a different culture. T-Mobile is different than Starbucks, is different than Amazon, is different than Wells Fargo or USAA or JP Morgan. They all have their own culture, not good or bad. They're just different. And if you're going to be successful as a transitioning veteran, you need to find a culture that's the right fit for you. Because if you don't, to your point, you're not going to be there for long, and which is a bad taste in the mouth of the veteran, of the company. They may not want to hire more veterans if they have the wrong fit. So, having the luxury of time, because the spouse is employed, and you can really have a better and more, engaging transition and find a place that really is a cultural fit for you, is hugely important. And having the spouse have a job that allows you to do that, instead of saying, I just need to get something to get money, which is, I understand that, but again, it's not a recipe for success long term, obviously, right? Yeah.
Yep, 100%.
And so, I would say, when you first got into the role at T-Mobile, what programs did they have? What's been the kind of the progression there to kind of your focus? I think of you as the mil-spouse champion, because you're really, at the conferences, you have such great stories and talk about mil-spouses, but what are some of the things you've done there at T-Mobile to kind of grow the programs when you first got there to where they are now?
Yeah, so man, that's been an evolution and a lot for sure. But when I first joined, we didn't really have a huge focus on military spouse hiring. It's not that we weren't hiring military spouses, but a lot of the work and effort was really geared towards the veteran and transitioning service member. When I came on, very quickly identified, like even you mentioned the aprons with Starbucks. That was huge. That was a huge thing that really recognized, we appreciate your service. Even as a military spouse, you don't have to be a service member to be recognized. And so in our stores, we have name badges that you can actually put on the bottom that say your branch of service, if you're a veteran, if that's something you want to do. We did not have that for military spouses. And so we also were not capturing self-ID past the point of application. And so really quickly identifying some of the low-hanging fruit, because how can you say that you appreciate and invest and recognize a community that you're not even aware of? How can you be aware of a community if you're not capturing it, if you're not recognizing them? And so really starting from the ground up of, how can we really gauge what this community is like here and what they need unless we know who they are? And so, starting there and identifying, how do we make this a safe place? So it really started with identifying benefits that they could really take their job with them. So the portable location policy, when that came out from the C-suite for our retail stores, that was a big green flag of we will help you take your career with you no matter where you go. Where the hurdle was then working on establishing remote or portable work options for our headquarters-based roles. Because coming out of COVID, as a lot of companies were going back to office, we really needed to evaluate what's the easiest way to get people to self-identify. It's about making an environment that they trust and that they're comfortable doing so in. You can have all the systems in place, but if I'm a military spouse and I don't feel like my company supports me as a military spouse, I'm for sure not going to self-ID. So it's about creating the environment and the landscape that they feel like, yes, I can feel safe and recognized here in my job. Portable location and remote work options, 100% the big opportunity that military spouses say that they face in the employment sector. So we did that. We made that a policy, and actually it's company-wide. So if the job allows it, we will either make an exception for a location or transfer that role to remote so that military spouse can keep or obtain that job. And so then it was about putting that self-ID in place at the point of application, as well as on the back end for employees to be recognized, and then explaining the why. And then very slowly engaging in additional opportunities, so flexible work hours. And then adding in the ability, as of last year, we added in a PCS paid time off policy. So if you PCS, we will pay you 40 plus hours of time off for you to PCS and move. And it's amazing to me because I just had someone from our call centers. She PCS from a call center to somewhere we do not have a call center. Because of the awareness that we've been able to create within the company about, we embrace military spouses. This is a safe place to go. We will support you or move. She was able to PCS and take her job with her into a remote capacity. She took advantage of the PCS paid time off. And she said she would have had to go 10 days without getting paid if we did not have that benefit, because the move took her longer than she thought. She had some obstacles with some other things that came up. Of course, when you move to the military, all the things are going to happen. Right. So, that was a differentiator for her, because then she said, had I not had that benefit, I might have gotten reprimanded for not meeting the attendance requirements. And so when you think about these things that may seem little, it's huge in creating the environment where military spouses feel seen, appreciated, heard, and they can go through these moments that unless you go through them, you have no idea how difficult it is to, look for a place to live, a new vet, a new school, all of these things, every couple years. But then also not have that used against you, because it's also, I hear from a lot of employers, well, I'm afraid to hire military spouses because they're just going to leave. Well, what does your retention look like today? Because I guarantee you that other people are leaving in shorter periods of time. And the military spouses that we've brought on board or that I've met, they're super powered. I mean, they are unicorns. They're some of the greatest human beings that I've met. But then also the dedication, resiliency, adaptability, ability to learn. So I think when, we slowly built and identified, like, where do we start? What is our community here? What are some things that we could very easily put into place to have this be a place that military spouses want to work and want to stay at? It's been a 3.5-year process. And so I think that's been one of my big things, which is probably why you think of me as the military spouse advocate here, because it was really a focus and program that we didn't have that we've built from the ground up. Like, we had our first military spouse fellow. We've had 23 since then. So, I think that really identifying what the benefit is for both the military spouse and the employer has been really important. But also, you have to make it a safe place for military spouses to want to come and want to stay as an employer.
No, it's so many things you covered that are so great. And the thing that I valued with the spouses when I was at Amazon was the loyalty they have, right? If you give them an opportunity, they are going to your point, outwork everyone. Yes. And they're extremely thankful. They're just so appreciative of the opportunity. They're going to be tremendously loyal to the company because you gave them opportunity. That's something that I think is you can't put a dollar figure on that, right? Just that that you gave me this shot. I'm going to prove you right that, you gave me this opportunity. Another thing is, I think, the military spouse network is amazingly strong. I think even stronger than the veteran network in a lot of ways as far as spreading information. Guys aren't, most of the veterans are mostly male. They're probably not the best at talking and sharing sometimes, where the spouses seem to get the word out like wildfire. So if you do have a good program, or conversely, a bad program, the word will get out very quickly amongst that population, because again, I think that word just spreads fast. And if they see someone that is truly taking care of the community and putting their money where their mouth is, it just goes a long, long way. It's great to see, for sure.
Yeah,
It's awesome.
I agree with you 100%. And, we also formed kind of our own little group internally. Like, as we were hiring military spouses, we were meeting every other week. And there's something to be said about forming your own community, because so many companies, including us, have a Veterans and Allies network. Well, we're working on a subgroup just for military spouses because it is very different. The military spouses would meet and we'd have a couple that were going through deployments. That's a very different conversation than being the deployed service member. And so I think also understanding sometimes you just need a place for them to talk, to feel like they can bounce ideas off each other and know that they're not alone in those moments that can seem really lonely. Yeah, I've had formed new friendships. Like, on top of them being stellar employees, I feel like they're just good people and really great friends. So it's been such a privilege. I've met some incredible people in this work, for sure.
That is awesome. No, I love that. And again, I know Amazon, they stood up, they had their own separate, I think it was a subset of the military or the veteran warrior group, but they definitely had a mil spouse group, and they did some just different things. It's great, but awesome. And they were amazing energy they always had. It's good stuff. Well, I'll ask you this: what if you are a veteran or military spouse interested in T-Mobile opportunities? What's the best way to kind of engage or learn more about what y'all have to provide?
Yeah, so we do have a military landing page that you can kind of search through some of the military specific benefits. And then also we have testimonials from some of our military spouses and veterans on there directly. You can also access all of the roles that we have open. I would say do your research on that part first. Make sure that it's a good fit. We do have roles nationwide, which is the really cool part. There's a lot of different opportunities and it's crazy. 2 weeks ago, we had 1,700 roles posted. Last week, we had 1,800 posted. Today, we have 1,924 posted as of today. So no lack of opportunity.
Yeah.
For sure. But if you see something that you're interested in, leverage me and the team that I work on to help review your resume, make sure that the job's aligned, because corporate language can be a little tricky sometimes. So even corporation to corporation, product development may be different, across different teams. We have a huge consumer marketing team that we're growing right now, lots of opportunity there. But reach out to one of us, connect with me on LinkedIn, shoot me a message so that we can help you. Because while we do not use AI in our ATS systems, our recruiters are manually reading every single application. But they're going to want to make sure that your work experience aligns, and military experience does count as work experience here, which is a big win. Volunteer experience, unpaid work experience, all counts. So I can absolutely help out with just aligning the application with the resume and all of that so that you have the best chance. And then, we'll send a note to the hiring team to make sure they review your application too.
No, that's the way people get hired. I say that all the time. If you're just firing your application off to the ATS system and not engaging, you may get hired, but your chances are pretty slim.
Yes.
Do your homework, find someone over there, and networking. It's all, finding a job is so much about networking. I say this all the time. There's a one letter difference between networking and not working. Right. So if you want not work,
I love that.
Don't network. So network, get out there and network. And again, find the job, make sure you have the skills that align with what you're asking for, and then find someone that can be your advocate internally. That really is how that happens, for sure.
Yep.
One other question for you: what organizations have you found, if you were advising another company basically on getting into the veteran hiring space or starting a program? Where have you found the most success as far as what resources that you utilize to help you start your program or grow your program? There's so many resources out there. I'd love to share any kind of what are your best practices that you utilize as far as external resources.
Yeah, don't be afraid to cross corporate boundaries. I'm part of a coalition with a bunch of different corporations where we meet regularly and talk about best practices and what each of us are doing, how we're writing our policies, things that we overcame. Because I always say in this space, there's no competition. There's no competitors, because as much as I would love to hire every military spouse and veteran, we know that's not possible, right? So I'm going to work with my fellow corporations, and be a place that I can refer other candidates to or learn from. So I would say don't be afraid to reach out to other military recruiting or military program teams and just ask them for time. I know, Capital One, Wells Fargo, like I can name so many organizations that have been influential in helping me get to where I am, or that I've learned from or built from. And so I think that, don't be afraid to ask your peers and other corporations for help. And then B, I would say look into organizations like Hiring Our Heroes is fantastic. 4Block. I've learned a ton from Blue Star Families, and then also MSEP. So if you're not a part of MSEP or the Department of Defense with SkillBridge, those are really great. They constantly have training classes that you can attend to understand how to engage Virginia Values veterans. Anybody that's on the Military Spouse Employment Advisory Council or Veteran Advisory Council, every one of those people are here to help. So I would say start by networking. Don't be afraid to cross over boundaries. Like I know who does my job at Verizon and would love to, there's no boundaries in this space. We're all here to help with military hiring overall. And then just be a part of these organizations, attend an event, ask these questions, just be a part of a call as an observer. And don't feel like you have to have all the answers before you get started or before you get added to something, because then that'll never happen. Then it'll just keep getting put off.
No, that's great advice. And again, I think that's one of the best parts about being about part of the military larger hiring community is that, again, no company can hire everybody. And we all want every veteran, every military spouse to have the best job they can. So if I can't hire them at an Amazon, I want you to have, we want to share, we truly are in it for the bigger good, which is really not necessarily always the case in some places. But in this case, I know it is. And again, I think, I know I was embraced by other companies when I got to the Amazon, and then now try to help anyone that reaches out to me as well. And again, you're doing such a great job on the MilSpouse side and beyond, but love seeing that. And been great talking to you today, and fired up to see you in a month at the big Military Spouse event, the Hiring Our Heroes event in DC coming up in May, which will be great.
Yes, and I was going to say, Beau, too, what you're doing with Opline, it's really cool for me when I go to another employer site and I see your product there. You are helping those service members. And so also reaching out to someone like you that has a product for this community, more than likely you're from the community or can connect them with somebody. So, kudos to you too, because the work that you're doing never stops. And what you're doing is helping those service members and military spouses find meaningful employment through what you're doing. So,
well, thank you for that. Awesome. I love what I do, and it's nothing better than, I say all the time, send the elevator back down. People help me to get where I am. So anything I can do to help out those veterans or help out those military spouses to find a job or to give them advice or to point them in the right direction. I've failed a lot, so hopefully I can learn from my failures and help folks not to fail moving forward. And again, that's what it's all about, is sharing that information and mentoring our the fellow members of the veteran hiring community and the transitioning service members and the spouses that are out there. It's a blessing. So I really do. I'm thankfully part of it, and thankful to be able to serve alongside folks like yourself who are so dedicated to it and passionate about it, and are doing such a great job and continue to push the envelope on doing the right thing and changing policies that really, again, the PCS policy, that's so awesome. Again, the veteran gets time off, but the spouse doesn't, so yeah. What do you do? That's an awesome thing that you've done that other companies need to hear about and share, and I'm sure more great things to come. So keep up the good work.
Yeah, thanks, Beau. I can't wait to see you next month in Washington, D.C. We'll
Sounds
continue
great.
to make some epic stuff happen.
Sounds great. Promise to wear fun jackets, and we'll see you next month. Thanks again for the time, Lacey. I appreciate the time today.
Thank you, Beau.